government using corporate media is laying the groundwork for a murder.
There was a lot about this story that never gets reported.
The real reason for us doing this today is that, we have the 26th anniversary of the shooting death of Officer Faulkner and also the shooting of Mumia and his subsequent arrest. And we also have the release of the new book by Michael Smerconish and Maureen Faulkner titled Murdered by Mumia. So right now, we've got the case is right in the public spotlight. People are talking about it. It's a 3-part series in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And what we're doing here today is we're putting out our side so that the media is able to accurately and fairly show both sides of the argument. We don't think Mumia had a fair trial, and there's extensive evidence to a police frame-up and extensive evidence of innocence. But we are making the point at minimum that he needs a new trial. These crime scene photos were discovered by German author Michael Schiffman in the summer of 2006. And since then, it's been published in his book. He's brought it out. We've been publicizing them. I've been contacting every media person I can think of. Particularly, we escalated that in May during the week of the oral arguments before the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. So far, nobody in the mainstream media has printed them. David Love here, who will be speaking next, he wrote an article for the Black Commentator, a national website news source, and that article got featured in the San Francisco Bayview newspaper, a national black paper out of San Francisco. And they were the very first ones to actually print the photograph. So what we're trying to do now with these photos is get more coverage of them and get them into the bigger media, more mainstream media, so that people can see these photos and consider them for themselves. We enlarge this part here to show you. You see the 2 triggers, okay? And that means it was Officer Daniel Faulkner's gun and Mumia's gun, okay? Now, he testified in court that he preserved the ballistics correctly, okay? So what we know from this, at the minimum, is that he perjured himself in court when he said that he handled the guns properly. There's the hat, right up on top of Billy Cook's VW. So there again, you see the hat. This is where the hat ends up. Okay. Robert Chobert, people have probably heard of him. He was him and Cynthia White were the prosecution's top witnesses. Okay. And he testified in court that he came up, as he saw Faulkner pull over Billy Cook, he pulled up behind Faulkner. Now, number one, he was driving without a license, and he was driving intoxicated. So it's pretty unlikely that he would have even pulled up there in the first place, based on the story, right? And even then, he would have had to have looked through Faulkner's car with the dome lights on, all flashing, and through Billy Cook's car to have actually seen the shooting. And that's unbelievable too, because you wouldn't have a good view. But this big blank space right here, that's where he was supposed to be parked. Yeah, because this is the back of Officer Faulkner's car. Okay? And right here, there should be a big taxi cab. And it's not there. All right. The prosecution said that Mumia stood over Daniel Faulkner and that in the process of shooting down, he missed 2 or 3 times. Okay? So, if you're to shoot down at somebody and you miss and you're like this close to the pavement, that's going to create some large chunks in the cement where the pavement got blown out. And you're going to see chunks of cement that got shot aside too. It's not going to be a clean sight. We already have the official police crime scene photo of the area And that's what we're actually forwarding to right now, is the official police crime scene photo. But these Polikoff photos have been analyzed and looked at in that area, and there are no divots, no chunks of cement blown out, no holes from where it would have come. Okay, here we go. So this is the official police crime scene photo. You know, it's a little fuzzy, but I think you can get a pretty good picture that there's nothing blown out in the cement. Pedro Polikoff never went to Mumia's defense lawyers with these photos. He went to the district attorney with them in 1982 and 1995. They wouldn't get back to him. They ignored him. They did not want the photos. Polikoff did not go to Mumia's lawyers because he assumed that Mumia was guilty. And the reason he assumed that was because at the scene, he heard what he got from talking to the police and from overhearing their conversations was that the actual shooter had been the passenger in Billy Cook's car, Billy Cook being Mumia's brother. And we know that Mumia came from across the street from his cab. Okay, so Polikoff had just assumed that Mumia had been the passenger in the car. And for that reason, you know, he didn't have any interest. But this opens up a really big, you know, can of worms here, because people have always said that there was a lot of evidence that there was a third person there at the scene who ran away before the police arrived, and that he, or she for that matter, would be the actual shooter. And so this is one more piece of evidence in that regard.
I wrote an article in the October 18th, 2007 edition of Black Commentator entitled "Photos Bolster Claims of Mumia's Innocence and Unfair Trial." I would argue that these photos, when viewed in combination with the other problems with this case, bolster an already convincing argument that official misconduct took place. Just to give a few examples, the prosecutor in the case had a history of excluding African-American jurors and struck 10 of 14 black potential jurors, but only 5 of 25 white potential jurors. In a sworn statement, a court stenographer said she overheard the trial judge, Albert Sabo, saying that he would help the prosecution, quote, fry the nigger. For 12 years, the prosecution withheld evidence that the driver's license of a third man was in Officer Faulkner's pocket. Defense witnesses who testified that they saw someone other than Mumia kill Faulkner were intimidated. And lastly, 5 of the 7 judges on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the body which denied Mumia's appeal, received campaign contributions from the Fraternal Order of Police. Capital punishment is lynching brought into the court system in an effort to legitimize the practice. It's no accident that 90% of the executions that take place in the South, where Jim Crow lynchings and racial violence were the norm. And according to a study published by the Journal of Empirical Legal Studies in March 2004, a black person convicted of murdering a white victim is 2.5 times as likely to be sentenced to death as a white person convicted of murdering a white victim. Since 1973, according to Amnesty International and the Death Penalty Information Center, 124 people in 25 states have been released from death row because they were wrongfully convicted.
No one denies that Maureen Faulkner suffered terribly the loss of somebody that she'd married only a year before. But it has no relevance whatsoever to the issues of guilt or innocence. Victim suffering does not make a person guilty who's not guilty, or does not make a trial fair that was not fair.
On this day, download the information, and wherever you at, make sure you get the information out there.